Hi, everybody. Welcome to my channel. My name's Kristen. It took me 15 years to get diagnosed with a sleep disorder. So I'm going to use this YouTube channel to pass on a lot of the things that I have learned along the way, not only on my journey to diagnosis, but since I have been diagnosed with obstructive sleep apnea and have been treated with a CPAP machine. So I'm going to talk today about, one of my favorite topics. And if you don't already, please check out and follow me on Instagram. My name is Me and My CPAP. And really kind of how I started, getting connected in this world of, sleep health and sleep disorders, which I've just come to love and feel so passionate about, is that I got diagnosed finally. That's another story for another day. Got started with a CPAP machine, but I've always loved traveling. It's always just been my passion in life. And so when I finally got my CPAP machine, I kind of just decided I was gonna maybe amuse myself a little bit and take pictures everywhere that I took my CPAP to. And from that, I unexpectedly connected with so many amazing people and amazing organizations that are doing great things for sleep health and sleep advocacy. And I've been able to share some of the things that I've learned, and I've certainly learned a lot from them and a lot from all of you following your journeys as well on social media. So today we're going to talk about traveling internationally while managing your obstructive sleep apnea. And this can be whether or not you're on a CPAP machine. The majority of the video will be related to CPAP machines. That's the world that I know about. But also I do have newly on board and as needed wakefulness medication, modafinil. And this was the first time that I was going to be traveling internationally with it. So I learned a couple of things about that as well. I'm getting ready for a trip from the United States. I live in Boston and I'm going to Auckland, New Zealand, and a little pop over into Australia while we're there. So I learned a lot just researching what I need to be successful with my sleep disorder while I'm there. And I do get a lot of questions just about, flying with a CPAP, using a CPAP in another country. So why not just share some of the things that I have learned? Now, the first thing is it is very important when you're traveling and you're prescribed a CPAP machine to bring that CPAP machine with you. And it really is not as cumbersome as it might seem. It's an extra bag. They do have travel CPAP machines, but I'm in the United States, insurance companies, as far as I know, none that I've ever been on will cover a travel CPAP machine. So it's, just an extra out-of-pocket expense for the machine as well as the supplies. But if you want to spend your money on that and it's going to make your life easier, go for it. But if you bring your traditional CPAP, and I'm going to share here, I've decided to liven up my CPAP bag with patches of everywhere that I have gone. So I have been to 10 different countries, 10 different international destinations, and all different kinds of US destinations as well with my CPAP machine. You will see they don't all look like this, but I have a ResMed machine, which is probably the most popular, most widely used brand of CPAP machines in the United States. And the bags will look like this. And if you have never flown with one before, and you've never thought about it before, trust me, once you start bringing this around and you're kind of conscious to it, you will see them rolling all throughout the airport on top of people's carry-ons. So it's a lot more common than you might think, and it's certainly a lot more common than it had been in years and years and years past. So the first thing that you need to know is that this bag here that has your CPAP machine in it, it's carrying really important and really expensive medical equipment. So you never ever want to check this bag. You always want to keep it with you. And it does not count in the United States, any airline carrier, it does not count towards your carry-on baggage allowance. So you can have, if the airline is giving you a personal item and a carry-on, this doesn't count as either. So you can still have your purse or your backpack as your personal item. You can still have your carry-on, the size that you're allowed to take, and then this as well. It is exempt from carry-on rules, and you can let politely, the check-in person or the flight attendant know that if anybody questions you. Like I said, I've been to many different destinations with this. So between connecting flights, round trip flights, etc., I've been on like at least 100 flights, I would say, probably, with this CPAP machine. And I've only been asked about it twice. One time was when I was coming back from Austria. And so I don't know, maybe if the people hadn't seen it as much before, somebody did say, as I was coming in, the flight attendant said, you have too many bags. And so I did just nicely explain to her it is a piece of medical equipment. And then she let me go. And then another time was when I was going into the security line. The person was, sort of looking at everybody's bags. And he did just actually say to me, is that medical equipment? And I said, yeah. And I just went on my way. Those are the only two times I've ever been asked. You do want to keep it, like I said, you want to keep it on your person. You need it to breathe. Even if you're not going to use it on the flight, you just don't want to take the risk of it being lost. And then you're out the machine and probably out the money for the next machine because your insurance will only cover it under certain circumstances every X number of years, depending on your insurance coverage. So you want to just keep it, as close to you as possible. It really doesn't take up any space in the overhead bin. I've also never had a problem getting it into the overhead bin. You can technically pre-board with this because you need to be able to keep it near you at all times. I've never done that. I get a little anxious sometimes that there's not going to be enough space, but there always has been because you just put it in sideways and it really doesn't take up any room at all. If you're on a long flight, especially an overnight international flight, you do want to try to utilize your CPAP machine, but there's a couple of conditions to that. So first, you have to have the space. Sometimes I've been in very cramped economy, like trying to go cheapest as possible. And there was just not a lot of room to use my CPAP machine, but I have successfully used it on some overnight flights. You just have to research these things in advance because there are going to be certain things that you need to know depending on the destination and depending on the airline. The best practice for figuring out in advance is look up the specific airline that you're going on, because I have even seen some variations when it comes to US carriers on whether or not they want to be informed that you're bringing a CPAP machine and whether or not they want to pre-approve you to use it while you're on board. So go onto the website, JetBlue, Delta, Southwest, whatever, type in, it's usually under assistive devices or medical devices, and you will find a whole policy. Some of them will want you to fill out something in advance just to say, like, I intend to use this while I'm on the plane, and some of them do not care. But if you're going to use it, you have to make sure. I would say, I've been on many different airlines, the ones that I just named in the US, as well as Iceland Air. I'm going on Air New Zealand soon, so I was looking that one up. British Air, and they all have said, there might be some outliers, but it's just much better practice not to even try. They all have said you can use the CPAP on board. However, one, you don't fill up the water chamber. If you use that on normal circumstances, you don't use that while you're on the flight. It's just too much risk of it tipping over and spilling everywhere. And also, you should not plug it into the in-seat power outlet. They want you, because it just uses, I guess it must be because it just uses so much power. You need your own portable CPAP battery. So there are several that are on the market. I will say they are an investment. This one was like $300, $400. And this is the EXP Pro. So this one is EXP 48 Pro. This particular company has a couple of different CPAP batteries, and not all of them are TSA compliant. So if you're intending on bringing this with you on a flight, you have to make sure it's TSA compliant. And that comes down to the wattage of the battery. This is a lithium ion battery. And again, it will usually say this in the CPAP section or medical equipment section of the airline website, but it will also say what the, maximum wattage you can bring of a lithium battery would be on board. But this, when it's fully charged, will power your one CPAP machine from 2 to 3 nights. And there, like I said, are some other ones that are out there. So you use this, there's a little connection that connects to, the back of your CPAP machine the same way that you would plug it in with regular power. And then you are good to go with that. You also have to have your CPAP machine on airplane mode. And it's very easy to find that in your settings, in your menu on your CPAP machine. Now back to being asked about the CPAP machine, there was a couple other things that I wanted to say about this. One's relevant to bringing it on board. It is best practice to have a note from your doctor or something in a medical record that you can pull up that says, your CPAP is medically necessary, just in case you get questioned about it. I just want to put that out there. That's technically the best practice, but I have never needed to do that or use that. But if you do get any questions and the person's like a little bit pushy about it, which in the US, I highly doubt that is going to happen. If anything, it might happen on in an international situation. I was questioned pretty thoroughly about that EXP Pro battery when I was flying back from Iceland. But with that, I did bring along all of the documentation from the battery saying like what the wattage was, what the power was, and then they let me go. But that was the only time that that had happened. So in regards specifically to the CPAP machine that you're bringing, whether you intend to use it or not, ResMed does have, and like I said, they probably are the most common, CPAP manufacturer in this country, at least in the United States. But you could probably use it for any of the other manufacturers if they don't have one on their own website. They have something that can be easily downloaded called an FAA compliance letter, and it basically says that that machine that you have, the CPAP machine, is necessary medical equipment. It needs to be able to be brought on board an airplane and that it does not interfere in any way with the operation of the aircraft. So that should put anybody's mind at ease if you have any problems with that. Okay, so we've kind of covered like the beginning of the flight. You get through the security, you get on the flight, maybe you use it if it's long enough, and then you land. Okay, we're talking about international destinations. So you land, you're gonna be very tired, you're gonna be jet lagged already, and then you have to go through customs. So this is the little medication part of things. There's not anything that I'm aware of that you need to do with your CPAP machine when you go through customs. It's kind of just all the same stuff that I already said, it's medical equipment, et cetera, et cetera. But if you have any kind of medication for your obstructive sleep apnea, for those daytime symptoms, is typically why you might have some medication for the excessive daytime sleepiness, for example. There is a class of medications called wakefulness medications. I have one of those. I recently started on it. I've been using my CPAP for about 4.5, like almost 4.5 years. And just over time, a lot of my excessive daytime sleepiness symptoms sort of resumed. And so I had a conversation with my doctor, and we started on an as needed wakefulness medication that basically just impacts the wakefulness center of my brain. And so I'm on something called modafinil, Provigil. And in some countries, it is considered a controlled substance. I mean, even here, in the United States, I can only get like a 30-day supply at a time. I had to sign something for my doctor. I have to every so often do like a urine test because it is something that can be misused. And so certain countries just have different thoughts and opinions when it comes to that. So you want to make sure that you look up, what are the customs requirements for not only the country that you're going to, but if you have any kind of layover internationally in another country, because you also want to keep your medications on you. So if you're going through customs or security at another international destination before you get to your final destination, you got to make sure all of your ducks are in a row with that. So I'm going to New Zealand, and I'm also like popping over to Australia for a couple of days. And so I just looked that up. And so New Zealand does have a whole list of medications that it considers to be, high risk or controlled substances, but that you might need a special clearance for. Maybe you can't even bring them in certain circumstances. But when it came to modafinil, and I'll kind of put up here what I was looking at when it came to the modafinil. It really just said it's a prescription medication. It's illegal to use it without a prescription, and bring with you not only your medication in the labeled bottle. That's always the best practice when you're traveling with any kind of medication, and also a note from your doctor stating that you need this medication. It's been prescribed for X reason, and here is the dosage that it's been prescribed for. And so most people don't just have those regularly, like already ready to go in their medical records. So you do have to look in advance. So I messaged my doctor on the portal and just said, I'm going to this place, and this is, what the customs requires. Could you write me a letter? And they uploaded a letter into my medical record. I printed it just to be like extra certain. And it did say, he actually did a really, really nice job, or whoever on his team did it, saying that I have X diagnosis of a sleep disorder, and that one of the major hallmarks is my excessive daytime sleepiness, and that this medication is essential for me. There's a medical need. It's prescribed by him, et cetera, et cetera. So I do have to actually declare it when I get to New Zealand customs. So I'm going to do that. I'll put it on my little form, declare it, and have my letter ready to go. And hopefully there won't be any problems. Because the last thing that I want or that I want for any of you is to become locked up abroad. Okay. So we want to be able to take the medication that we need. We want to be alert. That's why I need the modafinil at certain times. I don't take it every day, but I'm not trying to get locked up abroad over it. So look it up. There are definitely some countries that are really, really strict about these types of medications. Or if you have any other class, I only know about this wakefulness class of medications. If you have any other class or you have any comorbid sleep disorders, there's a whole like other host of, sort of regulations when it comes to medication for narcolepsy. I just know that from some of the people that I've gotten to know from Instagram. So just make sure, you do your, due diligence before you even get on that flight, because the last thing you're going to be able to do actually when you land in customs after a really, really long flight is problem solve in any way. So you just want to have it all there ready to go. So now we're covering while we're there, while you're in another country internationally, how are you going to manage your sleep disorder? So specifically with your CPAP machine. So you do want to use distilled water. And let me tell you, for whatever reason, I can never find distilled water when I land at my destination. I don't know what it is. I've gone to really remote places. So I thought, okay, that must be what it is. But I've also gone to like huge cities, huge European cities where there's stores on every single corner. And I just can never find it. I don't know what the problem is. So there are these small bottles of water, distilled water that you can bring with you. There's a couple caveats to this as well. It does say on it like medically necessary for CPAPs, and it kind of says all this sort of stuff, travel friendly, TSA friendly, blah, 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 blah. But this is just a company saying this. So it's really up to TSA and it's really up to whatever security you get at the next destination. TSA is just in the US. It's really up to the next security if they're gonna, buy what this company is selling, basically, in terms of what this is. So if you're checking a bag, no problem at all. Just pop a couple in there. It will make your life so much easier. But if you're doing a carry-on only, I would try to take only one of these because I've tried to take two before and that has been a problem. So I would try to take just one of these. It has to be sealed. So you can't open it before. And you have to take it apart outside of your stuff when you're putting it through the security and TSA. So major shout out to the TSA security people at Boston Logan Airport, because I have brought this and a different brand just like this many, many, many times through the security line. And they're always so nice and lovely about it. They're really, really great. So, and it comes down to you got to know what you're doing too. So I know when I put my stuff in, I always put my CPAP like close to this, so they kind of put two and two together a little bit. But before I put it through, I will ask them for one of those small little bins, and I will just say like, this is for my medical equipment. You just want to say that it's a medical exemption, you can say, but I just say, this is for my medical equipment, my CPAP machine. Can you all just check it? And then goes through the security, and then what they always do is pull you aside. But it's in Boston, at least, love them. It's always so nice and straightforward. What they will do, sometimes they'll like swab your hands, sometimes they'll check you in a couple other ways. Maybe they'll look in your bag like a little more closely, but 95% of the time, what they do is put this in some kind of machine that is able to test what it is and what's in it without actually opening it. And then they give it back to me, and it is amazing. Now, when I didn't really think about it, went through London Heathrow on the way to Austria at one point, and that this was one of those times I was talking about. You have an international layover, and obviously you have to, go by their rules, but I didn't think it was going to be a problem. I thought I could just say the same thing, like, oh, this is for my CPAP machine. Can you just test it? No, the lady was not having it. She was maybe not the most pleasant person at baseline anyway, but she was demanding some sort of letter from me, from my doctor, that I specifically need to take this with me. I just tried to explain to her like it's really necessary for the machine, blah, 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 blah. But I didn't have a letter like that ready to go. So in the trash can it went. And then when I got home, I did actually ask my doctor for one of those letters. So he did give me a letter saying like, I can travel with this. It's medically necessary, but I don't know. I haven't used it since that time, and I don't know if it's even going to be worth it. I was just a little irritated by the person at Heathrow. So I was like, you need a letter? When I get home, I'm going to get a letter. You also need to be able to clean your CPAP supplies while you're there. That's something you can go out and find, like some dish soap, like Dawn dish soap or something like that. Or you can get these like fun little packets, CPAP soap. I really like this brand. You can get it at like any major sort of retailer that sells CPAP supplies. CPAP soap, these are small little like one-time use soap packets, which are really, really nice to use. So you can just clean it in your hotel room or whatever. Okay, the last thing I'm going to cover is something that I get asked all of the time. And I have to tell you, even when I did my research on my first few international flights, I was still really nervous. Like when I went to go plug in that CPAP machine, I thought it was going to explode. So people always ask, like, do I need any special kind of a like power adapter for my CPAP when I'm using it in another country? And so here's how you can find out the answer to that. For 99% of us, the answer is going to be no, you don't need anything extra besides just a regular plug adapter. But I'm not out here giving that kind of a blanket statement because you have to check. So, as you know, in the United States, at least, we have these two-prong plugs, and there's a certain power wattage that goes, through our electricity into these plugs. So when you're going to another country, you have to check what their outlets look like. Usually the outlets look different. So I can't plug this into an outlet in New Zealand. So I had to get a plug adapter. This is what it is, an adapter. You can get these very inexpensively on anywhere, on Amazon, any place. I had some. I used to work at Brookstone. That was my first job ever when I was in high school. And so I still have some that I got from Brookstone very inexpensively. And basically all you do, you plug this in, and all it does is changes the plug shape so that you can use it in the next country. Doesn't change anything about the wattage. So previously, and it's much less common now that you would need these, but even 10 years ago, I remember I did have one of these when I used to do some travel just for my larger electronics. You needed not only the adapter, but you needed something that was a converter that would change the wattage of electricity that was going from the wall into the machine. It's essentially. But most electronics in general now, but specifically we're talking about CPAP machines, are what's called dual voltage machines. So they are actually already built with the capability to handle a full range of wattage. So volts and hertz, that's what we're going to be using. Okay, my dad's an electrician, but I don't know anything about these things. So if he's watching this, he's probably like, you don't know what you're talking about. But I do know how to check if I need a converter. So this machine, I have the ResMed AirSense 11. I previously had the AirSense 10. They are both dual voltage machines. So I do not need a converter when I go travel to another country, as long as they fit the country's voltage and hertz fits within this range. So I'm going to try to put it way far up here. In this very top corner here, it's really, really hard to see, but you can see something that says input. You want to look at this input, output here. And it will say, for this, the input is 100 to 240 volts. It can handle anywhere from 100 to 240 volts and 50 to 60 hertz. The standard voltage in the United States is 120 volts and 60 hertz. Okay, so that's what we've got here. So that's on the lower end of this spectrum. And that's kind of the problem when you go from the US, if you were to say plug in like your hair dryer and it was in a country that had much higher wattage, it could fry that, if you didn't have a dual voltage machine. So let me look up New Zealand, okay, because I did already look this up, but I just don't remember what their actually wattage is. So let me look this up. All right, the standard voltage in New Zealand is 230 volts and a frequency of 50 hertz. So it's at the whole other end of the spectrum from the United States, but my machine, remember, goes up to 240 volts and 60 hertz. So I can use this in New Zealand without any kind of special power converter, just my plug adapter. Okay, so I hope that you have amazing travels, with your sleep disorder, with your CPAP machine. If you have taken your CPAP machine to any cool countries, please let me know. I'm always adding countries to my list. Like I said, I'm getting ready for a big trip, and I know if I didn't bring my machine with me, if I didn't use my machine, then I would have very severe symptoms, more excessive daytime sleepiness, even if I took my medication, or if my medication didn't make it across the border, say, and it would just really impact the quality of the time that I'm having on that trip, not to mention, all of the underlying health consequences that come from non-compliance with your CPAP machine. I mean, you need it to breathe. That's what I always just come back to. And I never, feel weird in any way about sharing room with friends, telling people that I'm using it. I need my CPAP machine because you need it to breathe. So, really try to be easier on yourself if you're feeling any certain type of shame or embarrassment about using it. And let me know also if there's any other types of topics that you want to see in these videos. I'm sure I will do a little bit more about background of my story. I had a lot of symptoms that were misdiagnosed. Because I don't have the traditional risk factors for obstructive sleep apnea. And I honestly was shocked when I got the diagnosis, but it changed everything for me. So I'll probably talk a little bit about that as well as just some other experiences that I've had, learning how to manage this and, connecting with people have also had very similar experiences with their sleep disorders. So I hope to see you all soon. Take care.